There's a new build that's all over social media currently. The build is Protector Akali, and get this, it's simple to play. Let's break it down. Welcome. Another breakdown. We got a good one for you. It's a brand new meta build. It just jumped to the top of the meta here currently. It's Protector's Akali. All the pros are talking about it on Twitter. All the challenger players are talking about it on Twitter. So we're going to break it down here. It's 6 protectors with Akali running rampant on the backline. We're going to talk power-ups. We're going to talk positioning. We're going to talk items. So sit back, relax. Let's break down some TFT. Okay, so let's just talk about the build itself. Essentially, the build is 6 protectors up front. You're having Kennen, K'Sante, Rakan, Malphite, and Neeko. And then Janna on the backline to round it out if you don't have an emblem. And you have 6 protectors. 6 protectors is extremely strong currently. Pair it with Akali up front, and you're doing extreme damage to the backline. So Akali is up front. You can pair them with Ryze in the backline, and there you have it. That's your level 8 board. Ryze gives the Executioner buff to Akali, whereas the Supreme Cells buff comes from the Kennen. There's some alternate versions of the build in terms of the final board, where if you go level 9, you can put in Jarvan for the 3 strategist along with Janna and Ryze, as Jarvan is fairly strong currently. If you 2-star them, you're smooth sailing. If you don't find a 2-star Jarvan, you can also put in Darius for the Supreme Cells, or Kai'Sa on the backline for the Supreme Cells. Or if you find a Lee Sin, you could toss in the Executioner. Because Supreme Cell and Executioner both are increments of 1 in terms of the trait, so it can go from 2 to 3 to 4. Same with Executioner, 2 to 3 to 4. Then you can just put in that Darius or that Lee Sin to kind of get that extra buff for Supreme Cells or for Executioner to really get your Akali online. Or you could just go same route. Strategist can get activated at 3 as well. Toss in the Jarvan just because Jarvan is strong. But essentially the build is pretty simple when you break it down. It's just 6 protectors, Akali, and Ryze. That's what you want at level 8. That is good enough to get you at least top 4. There are some win out conditions. One of which being a Radiant item. We're going to talk about that a bit later. Or getting to level 9 with a 2-star Jarvan, or a 2-star Lee Sin, or a 2-star Darius for the Supreme Cell buff. So it's totally up to you how you want to configure it in the late game. Jarvan is the best currently, but I have found, you're going to see from the gameplay, I played with the Supreme Cell, then change it over to Executioner to get that extra damage amp or critical strike onto Akali. So they all work very differently, but they're all viable, with Jarvan being the current best at level 9. But again, level 8, 6 protector, Akali, Ryze, you're smooth sailing. Okay, let's talk items. Akali, of course, is your main carry, so you're going to want the best items possible on Akali. What works with Akali is Rage Blade, Archangels, and then you can kind of fiddle with it a bit. So Edge of Night is really great. That I would consider as the 3rd best in slot item. You can also go Shojins. There's a few guys out there with Shojins. However, Edge of Night is the primary best in slot 3rd item. So you're going Edge of Night, you're going Rage Blade for the stacks, you're going Archangels for the stacks, and then you're just hitting the backline, destroying the backline. Once your Archangels and your Rage Blade get up to speed, you are unstoppable. Especially with Edge of Night on Akali, because you just essentially can't die. We'll get to power-ups in a bit, but these items are crucial. Now, if you get an artifact item, you're going to want to go Zhonya's. Zhonya's is amazing on her. That provides a survivability along with the AP. So it's like Edge of Night, but just on steroids. So that is a great option as well. Items are pretty straightforward. You need a lot of rods. So prio the rod on Carousel. Prio bow after that, because you can make items on Janna, such as Void Staff or Morello's. So you need that shred. You want that burn. So for Janna, you're going to prio your leftover tears, your leftover bow or belt to make Morello's and Void Staff. You can also make Ionic Spark and put it on a frontline tank item. That's an option as well, because shred is needed here for your Akali to do maximum magic damage. So putting that Ionic Spark on your K'Sante works wonders, as you can pair it with a Sunfires, a Warmogs, a Brambles, a Declaw, Steadfast is great on K'Sante. The items can vary on your K'Sante. You can just put some standard tank items. You don't need Even Shroud because this is a very AP heavy build. You can put even Spirit Visage. So any standard tank items work on K'Sante. If you go an all-out power-up, you can change that and put some AD items on there for survivability, like Edge of Night. If you want to switch Shojins over to Akali, then put Edge of Night on Cassante. Very viable, but All Out is not the best assault power-up. We'll transition to that in just a second, but Cassante's your standard tank. You're going to put all your tank items on Cassante. We already went over Akali items, Rageblade, Archangels, either Shojins or Edge of Night. And then you're going to want your utility items on Janna or Rise with Morello's, Void Staff, those kind of AP items. You can even do red buff. So that's essentially the gist of the items for the basic items. But when we want to talk about Akali's items, we need to look more into the Radiant versions, as that's actually what takes this build into an S+++ tier build. So for Akali, it is key if you find a Radiant item of hers, use it. It is super strong. For example, Archangels, Giga Broken. Same thing with Rageblade. When we talk about augments, we'll get into essentially touch with the Radiant augments that you can in the Prismatic tier. Those are always a must take. But for items, Rageblade, Archangels, if you can get the Radiant version of either of them, or find the Radiant Refractor to do that Masterwork upgrade, it is key. It takes this build from an S tier to OP. Okay, let's move on to power-ups. So for power-ups, it's pretty straightforward for this build as well. You essentially want one on Akali. You want Crimson Veil. That is the most broken one, as it provides the extra sustainability for Akali. If you don't get Crimson Veil, you can go Dark Amulet, but it's not as strong. Crimson Veil is the S tier power-up for Akali. Now, the second person you're going to be powering up is Cassante. And you have a different kind of variation here with the power-ups you can use. You can just go your standard tank power-ups. You can do stuff like Unstoppable, which is really strong. Round 2, which is still really strong. Or you can go a little bit of a different route. You can go the all-out power-up, as that is still pretty strong on Cassante. It lets you use some other items if you have some AD bruiser items available or melee items. You can toss that on him along with the tank items to kind of provide a small little secondary carry available to you. But the choice is yours with essentially how you want to curate your build. All of it work. The main thing is just that you have the power-up Crimson Veil on Akali. Other options from some of the popular guys online that have for Cassante power-ups is Pure Heart and Inner Fire. Both those work well as well. However, for myself personally, I prefer Unstoppable or All Out on Cassante in this build. That just kind of gives you a bit of a secondary carry in addition to your Akali just kind of wreaking havoc on the backline. Okay, let's talk augments. So for augments, there's a few. In the Prismatic tier, the main one you're going to want is anything that enables you to get a Radiant item. So like I mentioned with items, Radiant Archangels or Radiant Gwynsos is key. You need that on Akali if you really want to take this build to the extreme and win out most of your games if you have a Radiant Archangels or Radiant Gwynsos. So an augment like Radiant Refractor is perfect to choose because that essentially allows you to make your choice of Radiant item on Akali, which if you have the choice, you go Archangels. That is a little bit above the Gwynsos. Both work. If you want to go for Radiant Gwynsos, you can. No one's stopping you. Both will be fine. You'll probably win out regardless, but the Archangels has that slight edge. Other prismatic augments that you can go are anything that gets you to level 8 as soon as possible. This is a fast 8 build, as you essentially want a 2-star Cassante, 2-star Rise, 2-star Akali. You can do without the 2-star Rise, but of course Akali is the priority here. So you want to enable yourself to get to level 8, hopefully before the lobby, hopefully before people contesting you. So essentially at the turn from stage 3 to stage 4, you want to be able to go essentially level 8 as soon as possible with as much gold as possible to get that 2-star Akali. So with that in mind, your prismatic augments, you're going to want anything that propels you to level 8. So upward mobility, you can go level up. Any econ augment, even invested plus, those work wonders as it lets you kind of save your money, get free XP, get to level 8 before the lobby, and then chances are you have better odds to find that Akali. As that essentially is what it boils down to. Finding that 2-star Akali. If you get it early, you get it ahead of anybody contesting you, you will essentially place top 4. This is a top 4 build. You're guaranteed top 4 if you hit all the conditions. The main conditions being Akali 2-starred, Cassante 2-starred, and then perfect items on Akali. Okay, so for gold augments now, there's a lot more variation in terms of the gold augments. Again, we're staying on the course of econ. You need to get level 8 first, so stuff like Slammin', Slammin' Plus, Cluttered Mind, Clear Mind, anything that gets you to that level 8 as soon as possible, you're going to want to take. It's a must take. Just quickly kind of touching on a silver augment, there's not going to be many of them, but Silver Spoon works wonders. or Young, Wild, and Free. Those two are good because it lets you get either perfect items or that little jump on the lobby to make you that much closer to 8 that much sooner. But going back to gold augments, other than the econ augments that kind of give you gold or give you XP, there's a few that I want to touch on that are extremely strong in this build. So Sated Spellweaver is strong as well. Let me read this out to you and you can kind of see why. So what this augment is after casting an ability, champions gain 15% Omnivamp for 3 seconds. Excess healing is converted to a shield up to 500 health. This is amazing because it's all about your Akali surviving. If your Akali dies, this build goes to craps. The reason for that is your secondary carry is going to be a Cassante tank or a Rise with barely any items. If you chose to itemize the Void Staff Morellos on Janna instead of Rise, you don't really have a secondary carry. So your Akali needs to survive. The good news about this build, it is strong. Akali is strong. She can do the damage on her own. You don't need a secondary carry. However, in the odd chance that she dies early, you're screwed. So survivability is key. That's why we like Crimson Veil. That's why Edge of Night is key. Having an augment like Sated Spellweaver to let you survive with that extra Omnivamp, extra shield, extra health, it is perfect. Chef's kiss. Another gold augment that I personally really like and think it's one of the stronger ones for this build is called Preemptive Protection. Let me read this one out to you as well. It's the specific Protector's augment. So on combat start, Protectors shield themselves and their closest ally for 14% of their maximum health. The shield stack and it gives you a recon early on. So the reason why I like this augment so much is because it gives you the extra shield at the start of combat for all your Protectors and their closest ally. So Akali's getting a shield no matter what if she has 2 Protectors on both sides, and then your entire front line just gets that extra shield, extra survivability. It lets them take damage from the enemy team a lot longer, allowing that target kind of damage not to go towards Akali if other carries are target locked to your front line for longer. So it provides that extra survivability as well for your Akali, in addition to just having a strong front line and that extra shield on Akali themselves. And finally, the last gold augment I like is Protector Circlet. I think that's what it's called, but essentially it's the augment that gives you a Protector's emblem. This you can do on your own as well. You can get a Protector's emblem from other ways like Training Dummy, any other augments. If you get a Protector's emblem, it does make this build a lot stronger because like I mentioned before with the final board, it lets you get the Supreme Cells, the Jarvan Strategist, or a Lee Sin Executioner online earlier at level 8 instead of level 9. This lets you drop a unit like Malphite, who doesn't really do much for you other than Protectors, and as the crew bonus you don't really have. So you drop Malphite and you can instead toss in a Darius, you can toss in a Kaisa, Lee Sin, Jarvan, whatever you please at level 8. And then when you go level 9, you have that option as well of putting in maybe 4 Executioner, or 4 Executioner or 4 Supreme Cells, which can essentially buff Akali that much more. So there is some flexibility there with the emblem if you get the emblem. I personally like it. As you see in this game here, I think in the gameplay that I have the emblem augment. I do. So you can see just how I strategize with the augment in the gameplay that you're watching in the background. It is a great augment. I like it. In addition, with an econ augment, it works wonders. Just make sure if you're going that route, you have a combat augment for the last one to essentially give you that edge late game. Whether it's a scaling combat augment or just a combat augment in general, it would be necessary if you're taking an emblem and then an econ augment in your first 2. Okay, so with Akali, positioning is huge. The reason why positioning is such a big deal is they target the backline. So with Akali's ultimate, let me read it out to you. It marks the furthest unmarked target within 4 hexes. Then it dashes through all marked enemies in order. Each dash deals damage and so on and so forth. So what you essentially want from your Akali positioning is to have them target the backline carry. Now, it's going to be up for a gamble in the early kind of stage 4 area when you have your 2-star Akali and you don't know who you're facing because everybody's still alive. It gets a lot easier later in the game when you know who you're facing, but you essentially need to position your Akali to hit the enemy carry in the backline. Good news is it's extremely simple. You only essentially need to move Akali if you want. You can also move Akali and just so you have them together on the same side, providing if your Cassante has Ionic Spark, providing that shred availability, just stuff like that. It helps, in my opinion, to have Cassante next to Akali, so I would recommend moving both of them side to side. but you can get away with just moving Akali each round. Now, for where you want to put it, essentially Akali's going to go in the third slot in the front row, either from the far left or the far right. Think of it as a line up front. You're going to have all your protectors up front in a line with your Akali. You're going to want Akali in the third slot from the left. So for example, it can go Kennen top left, K'Sante, Akali. You're putting that positioning in if the enemy carry is in your far left. So when you're facing the enemy's board, top left is the enemy carry. So their backline on the left side, your Akali will dash to their corner on the left side of the board and hopefully kill that enemy carry in a few shots. Same thing if it's standard positioning and they're in the most basic positioning that you have, which would be in their top right when you're facing their board. You just switch Akali over to the third position in the front row on the right side. Same concept applies. That unit in the backline, the enemy carry, will essentially be considered the furthest enemy away from Akali, and they'll dash straight to them as long as they're on the right side. And this is where I mentioned you can switch K'Sante as well. You can put K'Sante on the second furthest from the right, keep that Kennen there, and then have the Nico on the right side, whatever you prefer. But essentially the third furthest hex on either side, left or right, depending where they carry. You want Akali on that third hex to match the same side of the carry, and they will automatically go towards them unless the enemy has a unit in the middle of their board. If they have a unit in the middle of their board, that could be triggered as the furthest enemy away, and your Akali could dash to them. Good news is your Akali might dash back towards the enemy carry anyway, so it's not the end of the world, especially if you have the survivability. It'll get to the carry eventually, but if you really want to position yourself for success, this positioning tactic is a must use. So what I'd recommend doing is just scout early on who you're facing. If everybody's still alive, it's going to be tricky. There might be 3 options of who you're facing. Just essentially, out of all of them that you're seeing you're facing, take the better odds. See who you played recently. See where everybody's enemy carry is. If there's 3 enemy carries in the back right, or in the top right, and 1 in the top left, you're obviously going to position your Akali on the right. Even if you get the guy who's in the top left, you can't predict it. You don't have a Zephyr. You don't have that Zephyr augment that they removed from the game. So unfortunately, you just kind of got to go with the odds. You play the odds game in this situation because it is so key with the positioning. It lets you win rounds that you may have not otherwise won with this Akali build in that stage of the game. So positioning is key. However, positioning is super simple with this build. So third hex, front row, Akali, same side as enemy carry, boom, positioning, that's all you need to do. Okay, so as we come to the end of the video here, let me just quickly touch on early game. Essentially, Mighty Mechs. Mighty Mechs, Mighty Mechs, Mighty Mechs, Mighty Mechs. You can go Battle Academia with an Ezreal, Rakan up front, maybe a Cat, Garen, that kind of stuff. I found it isn't very strong early game. I prefer Mighty Mechs. If you get a 2-star Lucian, you toss in whoever you get. You get a Aatrox up front, a Gangplank, Senna in the back line, pair it with other 2-star 1-cost you get up front. Anything strong like that where Mighty Mechs you have the extra unit on the board, it is fairly strong early. You could toss all of your Akali items if you have an early Rageblade, early Archangels on your Lucian. Lucian is fairly strong, and that's essentially where you're going. You want to play the best build. It doesn't matter if you lose too much. I went in one of my games here on a 10-loss streak and finished 5th with this build without hitting what I need to hit, and I had 0 best of slot Akali items. So essentially, all you need to do is preserve your health. If you can go on a win streak early, perfect. If you can't, go for that loss streak for a little bit, then stabilize your board at 6, save gold back up to 8, and then in stage 4, roll down for the 2-star Akali. That's as simple as it is. You just want to save your health early game. You need to get to level 8, and if you take those econ augments, that'll make your life a lot easier. So that's essentially when you go this Akali build, is when you get that econ augment. If you don't have an econ augment, you can go one of the 2-cost rerolls, 3-cost rerolls that are popular right now. But this build, if you get econ and you can get to level 8 quick, that's the goal. That enables you to play this build. In my opinion, it's one of the strongest, if not the strongest, fast 8 build. I think it even beats out that Samira, Edgelord, Volibear build. Try it out yourself. Let me know how you fare against that Volibear build. I think it's currently better, so we'll see as everything progresses, more stats and data come out from people playing it. but this build is extremely strong. Just get yourself to level 8, whatever early game you can play, Mighty Mechs being the preference to enable you to save health, enable you to get to level 8 is key, because all you need here is that 2-star Akali, 2-star Cassante with 3 items each, and you are guaranteed a top 4. Alright, and that's the gist of it. Let me know how you enjoyed this video. Let me know how the build works for you as well in the comments below. And if you made it this far and haven't already, consider subscribing. It helps me, it helps you. I have tons of meta TFT videos on the way. We're going to be breaking down all the best builds. I have some augments, Ornn items, the Ornn artifact items, Radiant item tier lists in the mix. So that's coming soon as well. So if you like that kind of stuff, you want to stay up to date on everything TFT Set 15, you can subscribe below. Like the video if you enjoyed it. But I appreciate you hanging out. I appreciate you checking out a new build. It's not Gangplank. It's not as strong as Gangplank was at its peak. But it is something new that will get you free LP if played right. So it's just something to have in your arsenal. Put it in there with the Kaisa build, the Jace Caitlyn build. And then as the meta progresses, as different builds come to light, you know this is the one-stop shop for all those builds, all those guides. So I'll always be covering the strongest builds, the most talked about builds through social media from all the pros whenever they come to light. So again, if you enjoyed the video, subscribe, like. I'll catch you on the next one. Enjoy the remainder of the gameplay. And as always, good luck on the grind.